I just found out that my partner hasn't saved anything for her daughter's college education, and now she's demanding that I take money from my kids' college funds to help hers. Posted by you/Nota Piggybank. I, 51M, have 2 children, Katie, 17F, and Mark, 15M. I am seeing a lovely lady, Alice, who has 1 child, Eliza, 17F. We met because our daughters are friends and have been seeing each other for about 18 months. We have lived together for 6 months. Though we currently live together, our finances are pretty separate. Financially, I do well and make more than she does, so I pay about 80% of the house bills. In addition, we both pay for our own individual expenses and for those of our children, clothes, cars, cell phones, spending money, etc. It had been going really well, and we were talking about marriage, which would mean combining finances. So we started looking at what a budget might look like, and it went pretty well, though we both had to compromise a bit on what we wanted. Then we got to college savings. I put a certain amount of money into Katie and Mark's college funds each month, and I assumed we would be doing the same for Eliza. It turns out that Eliza does not have a college savings account. There is no money set aside for her future education at all. I was stunned. I know Eliza is planning on going to college. Where to go is one of the favorite topics of conversation at the dinner table for both girls. Eliza is not gifted athletically or academically, so there is little chance of a scholarship. I asked Alice what her plan was, and she replied that she didn't have one. I pointed out how expensive college was. She asked me how much I had saved for Katie and Mark, so I pulled up those accounts. She said that was plenty, we could just divide it in 3. I said absolutely not, I had started saving that money for each of the kids before they were even born, and it belonged to them. She said, "What about treating the kids equally?" I replied that treating them equally meant giving each of them the same amount going forward, not taking money away from 2 of them to give to the other. She then asked about the retirement funds. I said no again, both because of the hit we would take on taxes and what it would do to our early retirement plans. I had worked hard to save to be able to retire early and travel. Alice said it was unfair to Eliza not to pay for her college when I am paying for the other 2, and I agree. But you don't start planning how to pay for college when the kid is 17. It's not Eliza's fault, but it's not mine either. Alice is accusing me of not caring about Eliza, that I would find a way if she were my child. I told her that I did find a way for my kids, it was saving for their entire lives, not hoping that tens of thousands of dollars would magically appear. It went downhill from there. At this point, Alice and I are not speaking. We won't be getting married, and I seriously doubt we will be together much longer. I don't think I am wrong, and neither do the people I talk to. However, I admit they are biased toward me. I am coming here to get an outside perspective. Am I the jerk here? Relevant comments. Commenter. Alice sounds like she's looking for a little bit of sugar daddy money pretty late in the game. It comes across as pretty sketchy for her to show up, throw her kid in with yours, and assume the bill would be covered. I would take this whole situation as a red flag at the very least. Ops response. I didn't include it in the post due to the character limit, but Alice and I had discussed our expectations. We did say we wanted the kids to be treated equally by both of us. Commenter. I get where you're coming from, but what I sincerely can't understand is, if she wanted her kid to have college money, why didn't she have any kind of plan besides finding a man with a wallet whose heartstrings she could tug on? Commenter 2. Did she have the financial ability to save for college and just didn't? There are many people who can't save because they're literally just making it paycheck to paycheck. You said you make significantly more, so I'm wondering if she even had the option of saving like you did. I don't think it would be fair to take away from the savings of the other 2, but I do feel bad for Eliza and understand her mother trying to figure something out. As it is now, she could still go to college by getting grants, loans, and student aid. I'm just wondering, if you guys got married, would she have to submit the combined income of you and her mom, or just her mother's? I went to college with financial aid and loans, it definitely can be done. But I had to include my parents' income, so I'm not sure how that would work with step-parents, especially if they just got married. Would you be willing to help by co-signing or helping pay for student loans? It's definitely not your fault or Eliza's, and it does seem really unfair to her, but it may not be Alice's fault either, depending on her financial situation before you. I hope you guys can work it out and come up with a solution that lets her go to school while allowing you both to be happily married. Ops response. I think it's a bit of both. I didn't know her at the time, but it is my understanding that Alice really struggled after she left her husband, and he was a deadbeat. You know, the kind of guy who would quit a job rather than pay child support. In the last 5 years or so, she changed jobs, and things got better. By the time I met her, I think things were okay. We didn't talk about finances in detail, just at a high level. I made more than her, so I paid most of the joint bills when she moved in with me. That right there had to save her a pretty good chunk of money. She would buy expensive things for herself and Eliza, but I spoil my kids sometimes too. I just assumed, yeah, I know the cliche, that she had her finances under control. But during that time, she didn't save anything for Eliza. I'm not an expert on financial aid. I had always known my kids wouldn't qualify for grants, and I planned to pay the entire cost so they wouldn't have to get loans. I think it's the combined income of the household, but I'm not positive. If that's true, us not being together might actually be helpful to Eliza, one bright spot in this whole mess. I am not willing to co-sign. I got burned on that years ago. I would not co-sign for my children either. They, Eliza included, have all heard my spiel on the evils of co-signing. I was willing to contribute to Eliza's college fund just like I do for Katie and Mark. I am planning to keep contributing until their last semester. I do not want to take on debt. I'm pretty sure Alice and I are done. I try very hard to never make a decision while I'm angry, so I am giving myself a few days to cool off. But I don't know that I can get past this. Op adds more info about Alice. Alice has been a single mom to Eliza for about 10 years. I know she struggled for at least part of that time. However, I also know that Alice spends a lot of money on non-essentials like designer clothing, shoes, etc. For the last 6 months, we have lived together, and her living expenses have gone way down because of it. She has bought clothing, for herself and Eliza, and ridiculously expensive shoes but still doesn't have a dime saved for Eliza's college. There is nothing wrong with treating yourself if you can afford it, but she was certainly not prioritizing Eliza's college education. Update 2 months 2 weeks later. Several people have asked for an update on my previous post. Alice and Eliza moved out on the 1st. Our relationship is officially over, though it really ended when all of this first came to light. Alice and I were able to sit down together and develop a plan for moving forward and how to tell the kids. Alice was not able to move out immediately. She needed to find a place she could afford in our school district. Alice and Eliza finally had their long overdue conversation about the lack of college savings, and it did not go well at all. There was a lot of yelling and tears on both sides. I could hear the screaming from a different room. Eliza is barely speaking to her mother now. I spoke with Mark and Katie. They were both confused as to why Alice wouldn't tell Eliza that there weren't any savings, and I couldn't help them with that. Katie, my sweet little girl, asked if she could give some of her fund to Eliza, and I told her no. That money had been set aside for her, and she is the only one it will be used for. She wasn't happy with that answer but didn't fight me on it. All of the kids wanted to know if Alice and I were breaking up, and we told them yes, that Alice and Eliza would be moving out. We emphasized that we were breaking up because we found we weren't compatible. It had nothing to do with them. The kids were upset, of course, though the girls were far more upset than Mark. They loved living in the same house together, and I told Eliza that she was still welcome to come over, just like she did before Alice and she moved in. Just because Alice and I weren't together didn't mean they couldn't be friends. I did sit down and talk to Alice and Eliza about options for college. Some of what I learned was from the comments on my previous post, so thank you all. It turns out there are actually experts on financial aid who can help. They explain loan options and even assist with applying for scholarships you might be eligible for. I paid for Alice and Eliza to talk to one. Eliza has amazed me through all of this. While she is furious with her mother, she is determined to go to college and accumulate as little debt as possible. She asked me to help her with her planning, and I agreed. I think I am turning her into a spreadsheet junkie. She has also gotten an after-school job and is saving every penny she can. I think she is going to be okay. Relevant comments. Commenter. Alice is very, very short-sighted. Op was covering 80% of their shared bills and had indicated he was willing to help Eliza with college funds going forward. Meanwhile, Alice had finally, after years of working lower-wage jobs, reached a point professionally where she was earning a pretty decent income. If she and Op could build a small cushion for Eliza and avoid getting married, so as not to affect her FAFSA, it's entirely possible that Alice could have covered Eliza's college costs at an in-state public university with her income, Op's financial help, and a combination of grants and loans, made feasible by the cost savings of living with Op and him covering 80% of their living expenses. Instead, she made unreasonable demands, and now they're breaking up, which means she has to move out and cover all her expenses, rent, utilities, etc., herself. Commenter 2. To add to this, the moment he found out there were no savings for Eliza, his entire perception of Alice changed, and not in a good way. He immediately saw her differently, and his opinion of her did a full 180. She showed her hand, and it wasn't a good one. Once he had that information, he was able to piece things together. Her doing absolutely nothing to save for her daughter while buying designer shoes, clothes, etc., and not discussing it with Op sooner allowed him to see a different side of Alice, the real side. Her mask dropped, not in an abusive way, but in a financially irresponsible way. And when she suggested the plan to steal money from Op's kids to pay for Eliza, oh boy. That was the nail in the coffin for Alice.